Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of BTTH Rebirth of Emperor Yang episode number 115 based on novel. So let's start. The voice full of charm came. Xiao Yan and Murong Qianqian looked surprised. Immediately, they quickly turned their heads. Then, what came into sight was a beautiful woman with enchanting figure. The beautiful woman has a gorgeous appearance and a concave convex figure. She looks incisively and vividly under the package of a red tight skirt, emitting a unique charm of a mature woman. Especially when Xiao Yang's eyes noticed the woman's long and narrow beautiful eyes with autumn meaning in front of her, she couldn't help beating a spirit in her heart. It seems that there is always a hint of teasing in the beautiful eyes of water waves. Dai Mai frowns and trembles slightly, which makes people tremble. Well, when the beautiful woman appeared, even if she gathered a large area of sight in the medicine workshop at the moment, suddenly, bursts of swallowing voices sounded in the hall. Some people who came here for the first time showed a look of stunned for the beautiful woman's enchanting posture. At this moment, many people in the field are a little distracted. They stare at the beautiful woman in red dress who appears in front of Xiao Yang at the moment. Even the look on Xiao Yang's face changes slightly with it. In the face of those eyes, the smile on the beautiful woman's cheek is also more and more rich. In the depths of a pair of beautiful eyes, purple color flows, which makes everyone in the field even more distracted. Seeing the look on Xiao Yang's face, Murong Qianqian on one side suddenly felt angry. His clever little foot stepped on Xiao Yang's foot. The latter immediately ate pain and soon recovered. Xiao Yang, who returned to his senses, suddenly changed his face. A pair of painted black pupils also burst into a deep shock at the moment. Xiao Yang naturally doesn't care too much about the beautiful face of the beautiful woman in front of him. At most, he just secretly praises it in his heart. However, he was confused by the woman in front of him just now. It can be seen that the woman is definitely not an ordinary person. At least, she must have practiced some kind of skill with charm ability. The next moment, when Xiao Yang tried to explore the strength of the woman in front of him, the fear in his heart turned into a horror in an instant. Unexpectedly, with Xiao Yang's soul power, I couldn't find out the strength of the beautiful woman in red dress. Fight the emperor and the strong, I couldn't help crying in my heart. With Xiao Yang's soul power, I couldn't find out who was high or low. In fact, there would be no other results except those above fighting the emperor. Thinking of this, Xiao Yang's heart suddenly became frightened. This western region is really a place of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Unexpectedly, I just came out to buy a medicine, and I even met this level of terrorist guy. If she recognized it, it would be a disaster. Murong Qianqian saw the uncertain look on Xiao Yang's face, and the eyebrows on his pretty face were also wrinkled deeper. When he wanted to fight Xiao Yang again, the beautiful woman in red dress suddenly spoke again. Cluck. Sir, you can rest assured that our 1000 medicine workshop is engaged in business. We only recognize customers and don't recognize their identity. As long as you arrive at our 1000 medicine workshop, they will be the guests of our 1000 medicine workshop. No one can threaten you here. At the same time, the smile on the beautiful woman's beautiful cheek was stronger, and Xiao Yang was shocked again. The woman in front of her is really not an ordinary vase. Just by the change of her face, she can guess what Xiao Yang thinks. This kind of person is terrible. Thank you, master. Until after the good film was carved, Xiao Yang arched his hand at the beautiful woman in front of him, and said solemnly, "Giggle, sir, you're welcome. As the owner of this medicine workshop, I have the responsibility to keep the identity of the guests, otherwise I'll end up in a difficult business." The voice of Nuo's words slowly came out of the beautiful woman's cherry mouth. Xiao Yang's face also changed slightly. This woman is not only terrible, but also a headache. Seeing the look on Xiao Yang's face, the beautiful woman couldn't help giggling again and said, "I don't know, sir, but do you need the array plate? If you need it, I can introduce some to you." Hearing the beautiful woman's words, Xiao Yang smiled respectfully at the latter and said, "I haven't studied the array, but I'm curious about the array, so I'll come and have a look. But if the workshop owner wants to, I'd like to know something." Seeing Xiao Yang and the beautiful woman show this polite appearance, Murong Qianqian on one side is mixed with 5 flavors. He glanced away and turned his eyes elsewhere. For Murong Qianqian's little move, the beautiful woman naturally looked at it in her eyes, but she smiled and didn't explain more. Instead, she moved her delicate body and walked slowly to the crystal counter. Her autumn eyes looked at the orderly array plates in the counter. "Giggle, sir, Please look at these arrays. Is there any difference between them? At the same time, the white jade hand in the depths of the beautiful woman slowly brushed over the display cabinet. The slender jade pointed to the array plates in the counter and said with a charming smile on her cheek. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang raised his eyebrows and immediately stared at the 8 array plates displayed in the counter. The colors of the 8 array plates are different. The size is larger than the palm of a person's hand. On them, dark or shallow, are engraved with mysterious runes with distorted images, which is the difference of the array plates. Although the shape of the array disc is almost the same, the runes on it are not the same. As for the color, it's just that the manufacturing materials of the array disc are different. The only difference on this array is the runes engraved on it. Xiao Yang frowned and said, "Yes, the most obvious difference between the array plates lies in the runes engraved on the array plates." As soon as Xiao Yang's voice fell, the beautiful woman immediately opened her mouth and said with a smile. At the same time, the beautiful woman took out an array plate from the counter and put it in front of Xiao Yang. Her heart moved. Suddenly, the light spread rapidly on the cyan array plate, and an extremely solid fighting spirit also gushed out of it. In the twinkling of an eye, a cyan gas barrier was condensed around the array plate. Looking at the morale barrier condensed by the array plate in front of him, Xiao Yang's eyes couldn't help showing a look of surprise, and his mouth couldn't help but tut and marvel. In terms of this air barrier alone, I'm afraid it can resist the full blow of an ordinary 8.5-star emperor. It really makes people feel ashamed that an array plate that is not much bigger than a person's palm can have such terrible defense. Giggle, sir, don't be surprised. The array plate is made of spirit stone. Although it looks ordinary, the energy contained in it will not be inferior to the fighting spirit of some ordinary semi-emperors. However, the array plate here is only some ordinary goods. Although its defense is terrible, it can only be used once. After one time, it will become a pile of waste products. Just when Xiao Yang was surprised by the terror defense of the array in front of him, the beautiful woman on one side took back the array suspended in front of Xiao Yang. Then his jade hand turned and another array plate was suspended in the void in front of Xiao Yang. The array disc is the same as the fighting skills. One is the defensive array disc, and the other is the attack array disc based on the attack and cutting power. Of course, there is also a composite array disc with the combination of the two. That kind of array disc combines attack and defense, which can attack and defend. Xiao Yang nodded slightly. He had seen this when he fought with Mu Han. After that, the beautiful woman bent her fingers and flicked. The black array plate in front of Xiao Yang immediately emitted golden lights of glass. Each golden light is about an inch long and half a thumb thick. Of course, this is only because the array has not been fully expanded. After more than 10 golden lights circled around the array plate, they hung above the array plate like a small sword and circled slowly. This array is an attack array. As for the effect, I don't have to say much. I'm afraid it's hard to get into your eyes. Cluck, cluck. At the end of the speech, the beautiful woman stared at Xiao Yang with charming eyes, and the latter hurried away at the moment of looking at him. Faced with the charm of a strong man fighting the emperor, Xiao Yang really didn't dare to be careless. After a helpless bitter smile in his heart, Xiao Yang looked up again, glanced at the beautiful woman's enchanting body, stared at the latter's ruddy lips, and said, "Now that the workshop leader has said the first two, why don't you also talk about the third one, which can be regarded as a long experience for me?" Xiao Yang doesn't care about the array. He just wants to have a simple understanding of the array, so that he won't have the power to fight back when he meets the array mage who specializes in cultivating the array in the future. Cluck. Sir, I'm always called by the owner of the workshop. It's strange to hear. I'm Jin Yao. Sir, just call my name directly. As for the composite array, I have to go to the second floor to see it. If you're free, I don't mind introducing more to you. Then there will be the master of Larojin workshop. Respectfully arched his hand, and Xiao Yang smiled. Seeing this, Jin Yao smiled back at Xiao Yang, turned her eyes and asked again. By the way, this time, Sir came to our 1000 medicine workshop, should he not only come for the array plate? Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang couldn't help looking a little stunned. Then he turned into a smile, nodded and said, "Hehe, the leader of the gold workshop is right. I really didn't come to the 1000 medicine workshop this time for the array. I mainly need to refine 2 pills. Some herbs are still incomplete, so I want to take a chance. If I can find them, it's a good thing. If I can't find them, it doesn't hurt." While saying this, Xiao Yang and Jin Yao have raised their feet and walked slowly towards the second floor. While checking the array plates just now, Xiao Yan has explored the counters with medicinal materials, but the result is that he has not found the medicinal materials Xiao Yan needs, which does not prohibit him from feeling a little disappointed. At the moment, Jin Yaro's words have made Xiao Yang feel hot again. When Xiao Yang and Jin Yaro walked towards the second floor one by one, Murong Qianqian behind them was wearing a depressed color on their pretty faces. Beautiful eyes stared at Jin Yaro. Some different looks gushed out of their cultivation in a pair of bright eyes. Jin Yaro, as the strong man of fighting the emperor, naturally noticed the hostility in Murong Qianqian's eyes. However, she didn't know the reason. She smiled and ignored it. She talked and laughed with Xiao Yang on the side and walked towards the second floor. On the second floor, the space on the second floor is a little smaller than the hall on the first floor. Several huge compartments separate the whole second floor. Each compartment is responsible for selling its own goods. Under the leadership of Jin Yaro, Xiao Yang and Jin Yaro turned around several corridors. Soon, a partition with the word medicine written on the plaque appeared in front of Xiao Yang and Jin Yaro. Cluck, sir, there are some precious medicinal materials specially sold here, and I can say impolitely that anything sold in our medicine workshop is definitely a real good thing. If we can't take out anything in our medicine workshop, I believe there will never be another force in this burning city. Jin Yaro giggled, but in that discourse, she was full of self-confidence. Hehe, in that case, it seems that you won't come in vain next time. Please lead the way. Xiao Yang smiled and arched his hand at Jin Yaro. When they stepped into the hall, Murong Qianqian wandered around at will in other places on the second floor. With the power of Xiao Yang's soul, it didn't hinder them. Entering the hall, the first thing I saw was a strange tree with a height of 2 feet. At first glance, the tree looks like an unfolded fan. Even the leaves on it are the same as a fan. The green leaves reflect the green precious light in the brightly lit compartment, as if the whole tree is emitting light. People can't help but move their mind at a glance. Oh! 1,000 trees. Seeing this tree, Xiao Yang's face was also surprised. Unexpectedly, he would see this strange tree here. 1,000 fan tree. It is said that every leaf of it takes 10 years to grow. Looking at the appearance of this tree, I'm afraid it's at least close to 1,000 years. Giggle, sir, you are really an expert in refining medicine. The 1,000 fan tree in my medicine workshop has a history of more than 1,000 years. Unfortunately, the tree died a few years ago. However, no matter how hard we try, we can't revive it. At the end of the speech, even Jin Yaro's pretty face could not help showing a look of regret. Obviously, she also attaches great importance to this 1,000 fan tree. It is not hard to imagine the value of this tree if it can be valued by a strong man at the level of fighting emperor. Originally I wanted to feed this 1,000 fan tree as the treasure of the town store, but now that the tree is dead, I can only put it here. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang could not help nodding slightly. The leaves of Qianfan tree are high-value medicinal materials, especially the millennium leaves that have always existed on it with the growth of Qianfan tree, which can be called priceless treasure and is what many pharmacists yearn for. However, now that the tree is dead, the millennium fan leaves on it are only a few pieces. The value of the tree has been reduced a lot out of thin air. No wonder Jin Yaro will be so sorry. However, Xiao Yang's eyes turned slightly, but his heart couldn't help moving slightly. Now it's the time when he is in short of pills, but he doesn't know whether this 1,000 fan tree can bring him some surprises. Hehe, the leader of the gold workshop doesn't have to be so sorry. I think I may have a way to help the leader of the gold workshop bring the 1,000 trees back to life. Xiao Yang raised his eyes and looked at Jin Yaro with a regretful face. A smile slowly appeared at the corner of his mouth and said with a light smile. As Xiao Yang's words fell, the look on Jin Yaro's pretty face could not help but change slightly. Meimo raised her eyes and looked at Xiao Yang, as if she was confirming whether she had heard wrong. You know, in order to revive the 1,000 fan tree, even she did it herself, but the 1,000 fan tree was bound to die after all. But where did Xiao Yang come from? Seeing this, Xiao Yang smiled and didn't say much. He just stretched out a finger and read it. Suddenly, a flame the size of a fingertip appeared at Xiao Yang's fingertip. At the moment of seeing the flame, Jin Yaro's face was slightly stunned for a moment, and then followed by an unbelievable look. After the good film was carved, I couldn't help but say to Xiao Yang's startled voice, "This is different fire. The Yang of life. The Yang of creatures ranks 5th in the list of different fires. The biggest feature of this fire is that anyone who owns it can have a very long life with it. Even some warcraft with a very long life are no less than. On the other hand, the Yang of life itself also has a terrible breath of life. If you put the medicinal seeds into different fire, it will take only a moment to make the seeds grow into medicinal materials. At the same time, the ability of life's yang can also be used to revive some medicinal plants that still have the breath of life. At present, the 1,000 trees are just like this. Although according to Jin Yarrow, the 1,000 fan tree has been dead for several years, in Xiao Yang's perception, the 1,000 fan tree still contains an extremely strong breath of life. This breath is gradually precipitated by the growth of thousands of fan trees for thousands of years. Even with the strength of Jin Yarrow, I'm afraid I wouldn't know if Xiao Yang didn't have the yang of life. The yang of life, I can't imagine that Sir still has this strange fire. Jin Yarrow, as a strong man fighting against the Emperor, naturally knew the effectiveness of the yang of the living creature. At present, when he saw Xiao Yang taking out the yang of the living creature, he couldn't help crying out. It's said that Mr. can control a variety of different fires. I didn't believe it before, but now I have to admire Mr. Yang. Although the different fire is strong, it doesn't seem to have much attraction to Jin Yarrow. Just he can't help but sip his mouth and praise Xiao Yang, and then he once again drops his beautiful eyes on the yang of the living creature between Xiao Yang's fingers. She seems to care more about thousands of trees than different fire. Hehe, it's just some small hands. It's nothing. With a slight smile, Xiao Yang also knew that Jin Yarrow couldn't wait at the moment, and immediately stopped talking. His palm opened and closed, and a green flame rose in Xiao Yang's palm. A few steps forward, Xiao Yang stood in front of the 1,000 fan tree, and the emerald fluorescence reflected on Xiao Yang, like a jasper. Master Jin, I've done this for the first time. Whether I can succeed depends on the results. If not, don't worry, sir. The 1,000 fan tree is already a dead tree. If you don't come, it will only be placed here and won't be sold. If you really can't revive the 1,000 fan tree at that time, the tree will be destroyed. But if you can really revive it, I guarantee that you can take 3 things from my 1,000 medicine workshop. Before Xiao Yang's voice fell, the voice of Jin Yarrow Nuo's words came immediately. Hearing his words, Xiao Yang couldn't help but move slightly. He is a real poor man now. There are only 3 imperial pills left in his body. I'm afraid he can only take 2 or 3 things at most in the 1,000 medicine workshop. Once so, he may not be able to participate in the auction in a few days. Therefore, what Jin Yarrow said at the moment undoubtedly makes Xiao Yang very excited. Hehe, I'd like to thank the master of Jinfang first. As for the resurrection of the 1,000 trees, I will do my best. He nodded heavily. Xiao Yang's palm, which controlled the life yang, suddenly waved back. Suddenly, the green flame swept out like a huge fire net, wrapping all the thousands of trees in front of Xiao Yang. At the moment when the life's yang gushed out, a magnificent breath of life surged out of the different fire and quickly spread to the whole compartment. Then, Jin Yarrow clearly saw that in the compartment, some medicinal materials placed in the air quickly became green on the originally dry surface, just like new buds. At the same time, a stream of medicinal fragrance scattered from the compartment, making people feel relaxed and happy. Aware of the difference in the hall, Jin Yarrow's pretty face suddenly showed a happy look. It was the yang of the living creature that worked. Of course, although other medicinal materials in the hall changed, the 1,000 fan tree in front of Xiao Yang did not respond at all. The green flame quickly covered the whole 1,000 fan tree like a liquid. At the same time, in the center of Xiao Yang's eyebrows, the surging soul force poured out madly, tried its best to control the different fire and slowly penetrated into the interior of the 1,000 fan tree. For the promise that Jin Yarrow said just now, Xiao Yang did it this time. The surging soul power swept out like a tide, controlling the green fire, moved with Xiao Yang's mind, and gradually poured into the interior of the 1,000 fan tree. The dark green bark didn't show any vitality. Xiao Yang had to try to touch the deepest vitality of Chen fan tree with different fire. Only when he touched the vitality, the yang of the living creature could act accordingly. The thick and solid trunk is like an iron wall. Even though Xiao Yang spent a lot of effort, and even a lot of sweat has appeared on his forehead, it is still very difficult for the living yang to enter the trunk. Helpless, who is called the yang of the living creature, is not suitable for fighting. If you want to enter the depths of the trunk of Chenfan tree, there is no other way except to push slowly with the power of soul. Therefore, although you feel tired for this, Xiao Yang can only insist helplessly. An ancient tree with a diameter of more than 1 foot could easily penetrate without different fire if it were other things. But at the moment, although Xiao Yang tried his best, the speed of different fire entering 1,000 fan tree is still pitiful. Such a slow process lasted 3 hours, and in these 3 hours, the look on Xiao Yang's face also changed from the initial insipid to the dignified at the moment. Poof! Until a moment, there was a slight dull sound in the dark green trunk. Suddenly, Xiao Yang's pale face suddenly became a surprise. His heart moved, and the yang of the living creatures in the trunk quickly rose. Hiss, hiss. The sound of hissing came from the trunk. The mood in Xiao Yang and Jin Yao's heart also suddenly became nervous. With the rising of the living yang, wisps of green flames poured out from the trunk. In a short time, the whole 1,000-fan tree seemed to be ignited by the fire. In the face of this scene, Xiao Yang and Jin Yao have no time to take care of it. They stare at the 1,000-fan tree in front of them. Their minds are highly concentrated, and their soul power is shrouded around the 1,000-fan tree, constantly exploring the breath on it. However, the reality always seems so unsatisfactory. Although they stared at the 1,000-fan tree for a long time, RAO is so. The whole 1,000-fan tree still stands in place like a sculpture, motionless. Even with the blessing of the yang of life, the 1,000-fan tree still hasn't changed. After all, I failed. Until a long time later, when they felt a loss in their hearts, when Xiao Yang wanted to take back his life yang, a slight click came from a branch of the 1,000 trees. Although the voice seemed very small, Xiao Yang's hearing still heard it clearly. Suddenly, they looked up together, their eyes followed the prestige, and their eyes were full of surprise. However, the next moment, when they saw clearly where the voice came from, the look on their faces was stunned again, and the excitement just rising in their hearts fell to the bottom again in an instant. I saw that the branch, which was originally as hard as steel, had cracked an inch-long crack under the burning of the living yang. With the eyes of Xiao Yang and Jin Yao, more cracks were gradually densely distributed on the whole 1,000-fan tree. At first glance, the whole tree seemed to be surrounded by a huge net cover. In the hearts of Xiao Yang and Jin Yao, also quickly surged up a loss. Unexpectedly, the hope they had just found was only such a dilapidated look after spending 3 hours. Under the burning of different fire, I think this 1,000 trees will completely fall apart in a short time. Alas! With a helpless sigh, Xiao Yang's heart moved, and the yang of the living creatures burning on the 1,000-fan tree dispersed. However, the cracking sound still rang on the whole 1,000-fan tree. Xiao Yang and Jin Yao looked at each other. The charm in the latter's eyes also quietly dispersed and changed into a real color of pity. Obviously, she really cares about these 1,000 trees, but now that she has reached such a situation, she can only say that she has nothing to do. Mr. Xiao Yang, don't worry. If 1,000 trees are destroyed, they will be destroyed. Anyway, they are also one. However, before Jin Yao's words fell, his eyes suddenly opened when he looked at the 1,000-fan tree. Then, a deeply unbelievable look came out of Jin Yao's eyes. Immediately after that, he turned into an uncontrollable excited color. At the same time, Xiao Yang on his side changed his face again. The lost look on his face at the previous moment disappeared at this moment. Instead, it was a color of ecstasy like the rest of life. His originally pale face became red because of the scene on the 1,000 trees at the moment. At the moment, the emotions in the hearts of the two people are more excited than ever. Looking intently, I saw that on the trunk of the 1,000-fan tree, which was originally covered with cracks, with the falling of dark green bark, under the bark, a piece of brand new bark as green as newborn buds was slowly exposed to the air. With the dark green bark falling off, what appears in the eyes of Xiao Yang and Jin Yao is a new face as green as a bud. The green branches are full of vitality at a glance, especially the young seedlings born from the branches make this 1,000-fan tree full of vitality. If the dark green 1,000-fan tree was an old man in twilight, then at the moment, what appeared in front of Xiao Yang was a strong young man in his youth. The whole 1,000-fan tree revealed a surging vitality up and down. They only felt that the air around heaven and earth had become fresh. A smell of grass spread leisurely and gradually filled the whole hall. On the 1,000-fan tree, the small green buds of chopsticks grow rapidly, and quickly become strong and solid at a speed visible to the naked eye. In a short moment, they have grown to the size of a human thumb, and on it, a fan-shaped leaf the size of a human thumb also grows. All this is due to Xiao Yang's different fire and the yang of life. It was with the yang of life that the 1,000-fan tree came back to life and grew at such a fast speed for nearly a year. At this moment, the hearts of Xiao Yang and Jin Yao were full of surprises. After some painful mood ups and downs, they finally saw the results they wanted to see. However, when Xiao Yang was pleasantly surprised, the 1,000-fan tree, which was growing rapidly with the naked eye, suddenly stopped again, and the extension speed of the leaves quickly became slow until it completely stopped. Seeing this scene, the expression on their faces couldn't help being a little stunned. Immediately, Xiao Yang hurried back to his mind. With a wave of his big hand, the green fire suddenly poured into thousands of trees and burned again. Without the spirit yang, although the 1,000-fan tree has been resurrected, it seems too impractical to grow at the speed just now. Therefore, Xiao Yang has to sacrifice the birth spirit yang again and use the effect of different fire to promote the growth of the 1,000-fan tree. Seeing that the branches and leaves on the 1,000-fan tree were slowly creeping again under the fire, Jin Yao's heart could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. Her white jade hand patted her heart. Then she turned her delicate body again, leaned over and smiled gently at her red lips. "Thank you, Mr. Xiao Yang. The leader of the gold workshop is kind. The 1,000-fan tree can be called a strange tree. Although I have heard of it, I have never seen anything in kind. I am lucky to see it today. If I can save my life, I will do my best." Smell speech, Xiao Yang also dare not neglect. He really can't bear to be treated like this by a strong man fighting the emperor. Giggle, anyway, I still want to thank Mr. Xiao Yang for saving thousands of trees. Of course, I will never break my promise. In my 1,000 medicine workshop today, as long as it is what Mr. Xiao Yang likes, just take 3. Jin Yaro smiled and doubted Xiao Yang's words. After all, with her promise, Xiao Yang would try her best. Of course, she had no doubt about her position in Xiao Yang's heart. The 1,000-fan tree is precious enough to impress the strong in Hua Yuan. As a semi-emperor and a herbalist, Xiao Yang is not moved by it. Hearing Jin Yaro's words, Xiao Yang felt a sigh of relief. He said so much. What he wanted to hear most was the woman's words in front of him. "Hehe, thank you, Master Jinfang." He arched his hand at Jin Yaro, and Xiao Yang immediately said with a smile. At the same time, in Xiao Yang's eyes, a hot look gradually appeared at the moment. However, when Jin Yaro wanted to take Xiao Yang into the compartment, the strange fire on the 1,000-fan tree was extinguished again. At the same time, the growing 1,000-fan tree also stopped again. Seeing this scene, Xiao Yang and Jin Yaro couldn't help looking a little stunned. Immediately, they looked at each other, and then frowned tightly. Everyone knows the slow growth of Qianfan tree. Although its leaves are extremely precious medicinal materials, the leaves that can really be used are those that have been more than 100 years old. The leaf-setting process of Qianfan tree is very slow. A leaf will be produced every 10 years. The leaf can only be used after 100 years of growth. Now, it's not easy to have the yang of life to catalyze, but the scene in front of Xiao Yang's 2 people at the moment is a pity in Jin Yao's heart. If there is a long-term breeding of the living yang, like the growth rate of the 1,000-fan tree just now, I believe she can get no less than 1,000 years old leaves in less than 1 month, but in this scene, without the different fire, the 1,000-fan tree will return to the normal growth rate again. She sighed in a low voice in her heart. After the good film was engraved, Jin Yaro raised her beautiful eyes again and looked at Xiao Yang. A pair of long and narrow eyes full of charm showed a sigh of sigh. Her red lips pursed slightly. The next moment, the soft voice of words that made her bones numb came out slowly from Jin Yaro's cherry mouth. "Mr. Xiao Yang." Hearing the crisp and soft voice that was more terrible than a female ghost, Xiao Yang couldn't help beating a spirit all over, and suddenly felt a thrill. He was really a little unacceptable to be called by a strong man fighting the emperor in this tone. Shanshan smiled, and Xiao Yang asked with a slight twitching embarrassment at the corners of his mouth. "Master Jin, what else can I do for you?" Seeing Xiao Yang's flattered appearance, Jin Yaro's pretty face couldn't help but be stunned. Immediately, she restrained slightly and smiled at Xiao Yang again. "Mr. Xiao Yang, you also know that the growth of thousands of leaves requires an extremely long time. The almost indefinite extension of time is not comparable to that of human beings. Therefore, I hope to. The gold workshop leader doesn't want to borrow the strange fire." Before Jin Yaro's voice fell, Xiao Yang couldn't help but ask in a frivolous voice. Hearing Xiao Yang's words, Jin Yaro couldn't help smiling awkwardly. Immediately, Dai Mai frowned slightly, bit her silver teeth and said to Xiao Yang again, "My body is really helpless. The growth rate of thousands of leaves is too slow. If Mr. Xiao Yang can borrow the yang of life to my body is willing to give 1/5 of the thousands of leaves on the thousands of trees to Mr. Xiao Yang." Xiao Yang's eyes were frozen. Unexpectedly, Jin Yaro could do this for 1,000-fan trees. Then Jin Yaro spoke again and said, "At the same time, my concubine will also owe Mr. Xiao Yang a favor. Mr. Xiao Yang should be able to understand how much the favor of a strong man fighting the emperor is." Hearing Jin Yaro's words, Xiao Yang's face could not help moving slightly, and his heart also wavered. Now, he and the 4 major sects will meet sooner or later. What he lacks is the strong man at the level of fighting emperor. Although Jin Yaro can't always protect him, if he can owe Xiao Yang a favor, he wants to help Xiao Yang sooner or later. No matter where a strong man at the level of fighting emperor is placed, no one will dare to underestimate him. After thinking in his heart, Xiao Yang's eyes narrowed, and immediately nodded to Jin Yaro in front of him, saying, "Good." In the compartment, Xiao Yang's palm stretched out and his heart moved. The green fire suddenly rose in Xiao Yang's palm. At the moment of the strange fire, the temperature in the whole compartment increased rapidly. The hot breath filled the whole compartment, and even the air became hot. Seeing the yang of the living creature in front of her again, Jin Yaro could not help showing a happy look in her beautiful eyes. Compared with the usual appearance before, the green flame at the moment looked a little different. Xiao Yang looked up at Jin Yaro, smiled and said, "Lord Jinfang, because of my own reasons, the origin of different fire cannot completely leave my body. Therefore, although I can lend different fire to Lord Jinfang, I can only separate subfire from it. Please understand this." Hearing the speech, Jin Yaro's pretty face was stunned at first. She giggled and said, "Mr. Xiao Yang is serious. You can lend the strange fire to my body. It's the best of kindness and righteousness. The strange fire belongs to Mr. Xiao Yang. How can my body force it?" Seeing this, Xiao Yang smiled again, withdrew his eyes and fell on the yang of the living creatures. Looking at the yang of the living creature who was beating flexibly between his palms, the gorgeous fire light in Xiao Yang's eyes flickered slightly. Immediately, his heart moved, and the green flame in his hand immediately shook violently. After several breaths, a green flame the size of a fist was separated from Xiao Yang's palm. Mind controlled the green flame and sent it to Jin Yaro. Xiao Yang smiled and said, "Because this creature's yang is a child fire, its catalytic effect will be much worse than its own body, but it should also have half its effect. It's enough that Mr. Xiao Yang can lend different fire to my concubine. After all, it's much faster than letting the 1,000-fan tree grow by itself. Anyway, thank Mr. Xiao Yang." Hearing the speech, Jin Yaro also smiled and nodded to Xiao Yang. After all, Zihua is Zihua, and its power is not higher than that of the body. It is normal, but fortunately, now not only the 1,000-fan tree is resurrected, but also the strange fire such as the yang of the living creatures is worth it for her. However, the 1,000-fan tree leaves that let her separate 1/5 of them still make Jin Yaro feel a little unbearable. She waited for the growth of this 1,000 trees for many years. Now she gives up, but she doesn't give up. But the words have been spoken out, just like it's hard to recover. Now, I have to hand over 1,000 tree leaves to Xiao Yang. Of course, if you were someone else, as a strong man fighting the emperor, you don't have to pay attention to Xiao Yang, but Jin Yaro is different. As a female generation, she can get to this point, and she has a foothold in the burning city of fighting emperors. Naturally, she has her own excellence. When she first saw Xiao Yang, her intuition as a woman told her that the boy who looked like a 6-star-and-a-half emperor was definitely not as simple as she looked. Even, vaguely, she even felt a dangerous breath in Xiao Yang. Although Jin Yaro was skeptical about her intuition at first, she chose to believe it after all. It is better to believe in the present peace than to deny the potential danger. Wrap the strange fire in front of her into her body with fighting spirit. Soon, Jin Yaromai looked at Xiao Yang with her red lips slightly pursed and said, "I promised Mr. Xiao Yang that if you could lend me the strange fire, I would be willing to give 1/5 of the 1,000 leaves on the 1,000 trees to Mr. Xiao Yang. I did what I said." After that, Jin Yaro raised her hand and gently touched her slender fingertips. Suddenly, the bright fighting light shot from Jin Yaro's fingertips and wanted to take off 1/5 of the leaves on the 1,000 trees. "Jin Fang Master, wait a minute." However, just when Jin Yaro was about to make a move, Xiao Yang's voice suddenly came out and stopped Jin Yaro's actions in an instant. "Master Jin Fang, I know the value of thousands of leaves, and I know that these thousands of leaves have been growing for hundreds of years. It's not easy to grow. I shouldn't take them off so easily." As soon as Xiao Yang said this, Jin Yaro's face was also slightly frozen. Unexpectedly, Xiao Yang was willing to give up thousands of leaves. You know, the 1,000 leaves of more than 1,000 years are something that even the strong fighting the emperor can't help but be moved by. However, seeing the baby in front, Xiao Yang can give up firmly. I have to say that this determination alone is not what ordinary people can have. However, Jin Yaro just praised Xiao Yang in her heart, but then, Xiao Yang's words made Jin Yaro's pretty face look slightly frozen. Did she see Xiao Yang wrong in front of her? "Master Jin Fang, can I take 1,000 leaves that have just grown?" "Well, The voice of words that came from Xiao Yang's mouth immediately made Jin Yarrow look a little sluggish. She really didn't expect that Xiao Yang would make such a request. No one would abandon the thousands of leaves of the millennium to pursue a newly born bud. This is simply abandoning the book to the end. If you were an ordinary person, I'm afraid no one would be able to help but spray him angrily, but then Jin Yarrow immediately understood. The young man in black in front of her seemed to be better than she thought. With the yang of life in hand, as long as Xiao Yang can get a bud on the 1,000-fan tree, he can give birth to a new 1,000-fan tree. Why do you need the millennium fan leaf of Jin Yarrow? Xiao Yang not only got 1,000 leaves, but also thanked Jin Yarrow, which made her more grateful to Xiao Yang. It can be said that she killed 2 birds with 1 stone. Moreover, it will also be of great help to Xiao Yang in the future. The adult love of a strong man fighting the emperor is enough to make Xiao Yang unimpeded in the Shilin region. Giggle, Mr. Xiao Yang, you've made an abacus, but even my concubine is ashamed. After thinking through these, Jin Yarrow's pretty face can't help showing a charming smile that charms all sentient beings again. Her eyes are full of autumn waves, staring directly at Xiao Yang, as if to swallow him into the general. Being stared at by the woman in front of him, Xiao Yang couldn't help laughing and said, Jin Fang Master is joking. I'm just doing this to let you and me hold what we need. I know that Jin Fang Master attaches great importance to 1,000-fan trees, and I just don't want to win people's love. However, Jin Fang Master, I believe this transaction between you and me will never disappoint you. In the end, Xiao Yang grinned, and a light shot through his dark eyes like a deep pool, and then opened his mouth. What the leader of the Gold Workshop said is true. The human feelings of a strong man fighting the emperor are indeed very valuable. However, the leader of the Gold Workshop must also know the human feelings of a third-class herbalist. This video will end here.